Welcome. Are you ready for another journey? I'd love to know where you're watching from. Now put on your headphones, turn off the lights, and try not to let fear take hold of you. I never imagined that real fear would arrive on a sunny Sunday afternoon, carried in my mother-in-law's smile and in the aroma of reheated coffee. But that's exactly how it began. My mother-in-law Marta was sitting across from me in the living room, hands folded in her lap, and that cordial smile that always seemed on the verge of cracking. She said she was worried about the way I took care of the house. She said it softly, as if making a gentle request, but the phrase sank into me like an anchor. In that moment, I thought it was just another one of those comments that disrupt harmony and then fade away. Now I know it was the first thread she pulled to see how much I could take. We had been married for 8 months. I worked from home, and my partner Miguel worked shifts at the hospital. Marta came over on Sundays to help us, and her help was always an inspection. She would open drawers, check expiration dates, measure with her eyes the thickness of dust on the television stand. "Don't worry, I'll do it," she would say. And the phrase sounded like a replacement, not a favor. Miguel thought it was sweet. "That's her way of showing affection," he would repeat. I, not wanting to seem paranoid, stayed quiet. The first small incident happened with the keys. On a Tuesday, I found my keychain inside the fruit bowl. I thought I had left it there in a rush. On Friday, the garage remote appeared in the spice drawer. I began to feel like everything was missing, and yet too much at the same time. That week, Marta came alone while Miguel slept after a shift. I spoke quietly, so as not to wake him, and carefully asked her not to go through my work drawers. "Oh, honey, how sensitive," she said, and took a plate to the kitchen. When she returned, her smile had vanished. "This is my son's house." Understood. It wasn't a question. Have you ever felt that invisible boundary being crossed? That moment when discomfort transforms into something darker, something you can't quite name yet? The question hung in the air between us, heavy with unspoken truths. I nodded, my throat tight, knowing that something fundamental had shifted in that instant. Share in the comments a statement beginning with, "I recognize that," because naming what makes us uncomfortable is the first step toward reclaiming our space, our voice, our truth. When we acknowledge the subtle violations that chip away at our peace, we give ourselves permission to trust our instincts again. Your recognition might be the validation someone else desperately needs to hear. The next thing was the story of the clock, a round, silent wall clock. Marta insisted on hanging it where it always should have been, in the hallway. I didn't argue. The next morning, while I was on a work video call, I heard a soft click, almost a brush of sound. I looked up. The clock had a screw slightly loose at the bottom, as if the cover didn't close properly. I paid no attention to it, until that night, passing through the dark hallway, I saw a minimal glow, a greenish dot that went out as soon as I turned on the light. I crouched down. The screw was actually a very small, curved lens. I called Miguel. "It's silly. It must have been a reflection," he said, and hugged me. I agreed to avoid an argument, but when he went back to the hospital, I grabbed a chair, took the clock off the wall, and carried it to the desk. The cover had a defect that seemed recent. I rushed to the toolbox and with a pocket knife lifted an edge of plastic. There it was, glued with silicone, a very small black device, with a light that blinked when I touched it. It took me several minutes to convince myself that it wasn't what it seemed, that she couldn't have done that maybe I had watched too many movies. I searched for micro camera clock on my laptop. The images matched what I had in my hand. My throat tightened. I shut down the computer, stored the camera in a plastic bag, and returned the now empty clock to its place. Then I took a deep breath, made 2 coffees, and waited for Marta to arrive on Sunday. I wouldn't say anything, I would just observe. She arrived with flowers, left her purse on the chair, put on the apron that, without asking permission, she kept in our kitchen. At some point, while Miguel was carrying a box up to storage, I saw her in the hallway, very close to the clock, her body leaning upward. When she noticed my gaze, she gave a little jump and smiled. It was crooked. I said nothing. That night, when we were alone, I went to storage. Among the boxes, I found a rigid suitcase, one of those tool cases. It wasn't ours. Inside were zip ties, electrical tape, loose batteries, and another camera identical to the one in the clock. An envelope with a receipt paid in cash, no name. The sender was a discreet security store in an industrial zone, 20 minutes from here. I went back to the living room, turned off the lights, and sat on the sofa in silence, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, and behind it, very faint, the click of a mechanism that turned on and stopped. It wasn't coming from the clock, it was coming from our wedding photo frame. That night, I barely slept. I stayed on the sofa with the photo frame in my hands, turning it over and over again. It was a light wood frame, with a photo of Miguel and me smiling on the beach. In the lower corner, a dark smudge of glue covered a small hole. I dug my nail in, lifted the edge, and there it was. Another tiny lens. I felt my stomach turn. I didn't know whether to scream or laugh. What kind of person installs cameras in other people's homes? And why? The photo frame had been a gift from Marta from our first Christmas together. Her smile came to mind, that sweet tone as she said, "So you always remember that day." I stored the camera along with the one from the clock and waited. For 3 days, I didn't mention anything. I observed, noticing every gesture from Miguel, every call from his mother. She called him every day. "How did you sleep? Did you eat well? Is everything okay with Manuela?" Always that tone, as if she were a concerned landlord checking on a clumsy tenant. On Thursday, I pretended I was going shopping and drove to the security store in the industrial zone. It was a grey place, no sign, just a doorbell. Inside, a bald man with large hands and the smell of metal. I showed him the cameras. He observed them for a moment and said, without hesitation, "Domestic model with Wi-Fi, range of about 20 meters. If they're connected, someone can see everything on their phone from anywhere with a signal." I went mute. "And is it possible to know which phone they're connected to?" The man gave a sideways smile. "Not without a court order. But if you want to know, people who buy this are usually those who want to monitor discreetly. You know how it is. Jealousy, fear of being cheated on, those things." I left there with my heart beating so hard my fingers trembled. I sat in the car and breathed. The idea kept hammering in my head. What if Miguel knew? No, it couldn't be. He wasn't like that. But what if his mother had told him it was to protect us? What would it mean to you if the person you trusted most had been watching your most vulnerable moments, cataloging your movements, studying you like a specimen under glass? The question dissolved into the humid air of the car, unanswered and terrifying. That night, I pretended everything was normal, but every time he picked up his phone, I felt a chill. Leave in the comments your reflection beginning with "I commit to," because recognizing when our boundaries have been violated is only the beginning. The real transformation happens when we decide what we will no longer tolerate. Your commitment might illuminate the path for someone still trapped in doubt, still questioning whether their discomfort is justified. When you declare your boundary, you give others permission to honor theirs. At midnight, I waited for him to fall asleep and turned off the home Wi-Fi. At the same instant, the photo frame in the living room emitted a weak beep, almost inaudible. Right then, I was certain. The next morning, I left before he woke up. I had coffee at a cafe and called a lawyer friend. She told me that if I could prove Marta had installed the cameras without my consent, I could file a report. But for that, I needed evidence. I decided to do it carefully. I went back home. I installed my own small camera hidden behind a vase, pointing at the hallway, right where Marta usually checked her things. That week was a tense wait. She didn't take long. She arrived on Sunday, as always, with a bag of bread and her smile. While we prepared food, she went upstairs to check the storage room because she heard noises. She took a few minutes and came back with a somewhat pale face. "Did you touch anything?" she asked me. "Nothing," I replied. She didn't insist. When she left, I checked the recording. I saw her open the suitcase, take out another device, and place it in the corner of the hallway. But the worst part was the end. Before leaving, she stopped in front of the clock camera, the empty clock, looked directly at it, and smiled. That smile wasn't kind. It was a warning, a message that she knew I knew, and she didn't care. Nausea rose in my throat as I watched her expression. So calm, so deliberate. That night when Miguel arrived, I decided to tell him everything. I showed him the recordings, the cameras, the receipt. His reaction wasn't what I expected. He didn't get angry. He wasn't surprised. He just brought his hands to his face and murmured, "I told you it was her way of taking care of us. I didn't want you to be scared." I didn't understand. I looked at him in disbelief. "You knew." "It was only while she got used to me not living with her anymore," he stammered. "She wanted to make sure you were okay." In that moment, something inside me broke. I asked him to leave that night. We didn't yell, we didn't argue, just silence. And the ticking of the clock without a battery. When I was alone, I picked up my phone to delete all the material, but before I did, a message arrived. Unknown number, a single text. "Don't turn off the Wi-Fi. You look prettier when you don't suspect." I stared at the screen with my heart racing. The message stayed there, illuminating the dark room. "You look prettier when you don't suspect." No number, no name. I tried to trace the contact, but it was a private line. I deleted it without thinking twice, though the text had already been tattooed on my mind. The next morning, I went straight to the police station. I brought my phone, the recordings, and the cameras in a bag. The officer who attended me was young, with a tired look. He listened to my entire story without interrupting me, but in the end he only said, "Without proof of threat or direct violence, we can't intervene, but keep everything. If you receive more messages or find more devices, call immediately." I left there with a feeling of emptiness. We can't intervene. They couldn't, but I had to keep living with that shadow. I spent my days with the Wi-Fi off, my phone in airplane mode, the blinds closed. I couldn't sleep. Every noise startled me. A door slamming, a creak in the hallway, a distant doorbell. When Miguel called me, I didn't answer. I didn't know how to talk to him without hating him a little for having allowed all of this. On Thursday, late afternoon, I heard the engine of Marta's car. I peeked through the peephole. She was on the sidewalk, looking at my window, holding a cardboard box. She didn't ring the bell. She simply left the box at the gate and drove away. I waited a few minutes before going down. Inside was a new photo frame, identical to the previous one, wrapped in gift paper, and a note written in her perfect handwriting. "Forgive me if I made you feel watched. Sometimes my affection overflows. No more cameras, I promise." The note smelled of perfume. I went upstairs with the package to the apartment but didn't open it. I left it on the table and sat in front of it. I had the feeling that something was watching me. That night, I tried to sleep, but at 3 a.m. I heard a tapping sound. 2, 3. They were coming from the living room. I got up slowly and saw the silhouette of the new photo frame moving slightly, as if it were vibrating. When I turned on the light, it stopped. I went to it with trembling hands and turned it over. There was no camera, but on the back, taped with adhesive, there was a tiny microphone with a thin cable that disappeared between the floorboards. Suddenly, the hallway light flickered. My entire body froze. The clock, the one I had dismantled, was no longer there. I went to the shelf where I had left it, and the space was empty. I ran to the bedroom. The window was ajar, and cold air rushed in. In the distance on the street, a car engine started. I screamed Miguel's name. He didn't answer. I called his phone. No one picked up. Minutes later, a message. "You shouldn't have messed with her things." The sender, the same unknown number. I called the police again, this time crying. 2 officers came, searched the house, found no cables, no cameras, no traces of anyone. "Are you sure you didn't imagine this?" one of them asked. He looked at me with compassion. I didn't know what to answer. I stayed awake all night, and at dawn I decided to leave. I threw some clothes in a suitcase, stored the devices, and left without looking back. I stayed a few days at a friend's house. There I could sleep, though every time I closed my eyes, I saw myself looking back from the hallway photo frame. A week later, Miguel appeared. He had dark circles under his eyes, an unshaven beard. "My mother is missing," he said as soon as he saw me. I froze. He told me he had gone to her house and found it empty. The car was there, but the phone wasn't. On the dining room table was an envelope with my name. Inside, a photo. Me sleeping on the sofa, hugging the blanket, with my face turned toward the camera. The date showed a week ago, taken while still in my own house before I fled. On the back, written in blue ink, "You know how to take care of him well. Now it's your turn." I stood paralyzed looking at the photo. I couldn't understand that image. My body on the sofa, the blanket, the morning light coming through the blinds. But something was wrong. The pattern of the pillow, the color of the wall, nothing matched my house. It was exactly like my friend's room, where I was now. "Where did you get this?" I asked Miguel, my voice choked. "It was on the dining room table. No one else has the key," he replied, avoiding my gaze. The next day, the police searched our house and Marta's again. In her house, there were no signs of struggle, but in her bedroom they found a small notebook. The first pages were shopping lists and reminders. Then, in the middle of the notebook, strange notes began. My schedules, descriptions of the clothes I wore, what time I left and what time I returned. Some phrases made my hair stand on end. "Today she didn't cook. She locked herself away to cry, but she doesn't know I see her. She doesn't like the clock. I'll have to move it." The police took the notebook as evidence. They offered me temporary protection, but I refused. I wanted to believe that everything would end with Marta's disappearance, that finally silence would return home. How naive I was. How many times have you convinced yourself that the worst was over, only to discover that fear has layers you haven't even touched yet, depths you never imagined existed? The question echoed in the empty apartment, mocking my foolish hope. I should have known better. I should have listened to that voice inside that whispered warnings I chose to ignore. Write in the comments a declaration beginning with, "I decide," because there comes a moment when we must stop waiting for permission to protect ourselves, when we must choose our safety over politeness, our sanity over keeping peace. Your decision today might be the catalyst that saves you tomorrow. When you declare what you will no longer accept, you draw a line that fear cannot cross. That same night, back at the apartment, I could barely breathe. Every shadow seemed like a hole through which someone could watch me. I removed all the photo frames, checked every outlet, even the stuffed animals in the bedroom. When I finished, I turned off the light and threw myself on the bed. At 2 a.m., I heard a low buzzing sound. I got up barefoot, following the sound to the kitchen. It was coming from the microwave. The display was flashing non-stop. I went to unplug it from the outlet, but before I touched it, the door opened by itself. Inside the microwave, on the plate, was a key. It was the key to Marta's storage room. I don't know how long I stood there before reacting. At dawn, I got in the car and drove to her house. The air smelled of humidity and mold. I opened the storage room door, darkness, dust, and the sour smell of old metal. In the back, A chair. On top of it, a phone recording in a loop. The screen showed my face in real time. I looked around, terrified. There were no visible cameras, but I knew someone somewhere was watching me. I picked up the phone with my hand shaking. In the camera roll were dozens of videos. Me in the kitchen, me sleeping, me crying. Some were recent, from just 2 days ago. In the metadata appeared the exact location, my friend's house. The place I thought was safe, the refuge I believed she couldn't reach. The phone vibrated in my hand, a new message with no sender. Don't close the door. I turned sharply, expecting to see her enter. Nothing. Absolute silence. Panic took over and I dropped the phone on the chair. I ran out and called the police from the car. When they arrived, the phone had disappeared. Weeks passed. Miguel left the country. He couldn't handle the pressure nor the guilt. I sold the house, changed my number, my city, even my name. I tried to move on with my life, but there are nights when the Wi-Fi activates by itself, even though I don't use it. On others, the television turns on and shows images of empty hallways identical to my old apartment. Sometimes, I think I see a silhouette behind the reflection, a small figure with grey hair watching me. Once I gathered courage to get close to the television and looked carefully. The camera showed my own living room with the lamplight flickering, and behind it in the corner, a motionless shadow with its head slightly tilted, as if it was smiling. I unplugged it from the outlet, threw it in the trash, moved houses again, but no matter how much I move, there's always something that finds me. A note, a crooked mirror, a clock I don't remember hanging. There are nights when I wake up suddenly with the certainty that someone just left the room. The air is still different, as if it had been displaced by a recent movement. I look at the dark corners and know deep in my soul that she's still here. Maybe she never left. Maybe the disappearance was just her way of becoming permanent, of spreading through every space of my life without needing a body to do it. And when the silence becomes too dense, almost solid, I hear it. They're not words, but whispers that seem to come from inside the walls, the floor, the ceiling. And I recognize that maternal tone, that poisonous affection that now no longer needs a smile to exist. She won in a way I never thought possible, by becoming the very sensation of being watched forever. There are people in the world you can read like an open book, and then there are those like my mother-in-law, Roberta. She was the kind of woman who entered a room, and everyone questioned whether they had really seen her. I'm 37 years old, and for a long time I confused elegance with innocence. I confused a perfect smile with real kindness. What I learned too late is that the most dangerous people are those who perfectly understand the power of seeming harmless. Have you considered how often we mistake politeness for safety? How we silence our instincts because someone knows exactly which mask to wear? The realization came too late, like poison working slowly through the bloodstream, undetected until the damage was already done. I should have trusted that first chill that ran down my spine when her eyes lingered just a moment too long. Express in the comments a personal truth beginning with, I discover that. Because recognizing the patterns that endangered us is how we protect ourselves going forward, how we honor the intuition we once ignored. Your discovery might be the mirror someone else needs to see their own situation clearly. When you name what you've learned, you transform your pain into wisdom that can save another soul. I met Roberta shortly after I moved in with Elisa, my wife. We lived in a small house in the Tatuapé neighborhood. She came every Saturday to help out, although in reality, she reviewed everything. The cleaning, the food, the order of the closet. I never heard her raise her voice, but every word of hers had a thread, a point. How strange. The shirt I gave Elisa is all wrinkled. Rogerio, this knife goes in the second drawer, not the first. Always with an impeccable smile. At first, this didn't bother me. I thought it was part of the marriage package. The meticulous mother-in-law, the typical woman who can't stand seeing a stain in the sink. But soon, things started to get strange. One night, while Elisa was on shift at the hospital, I heard a noise in the kitchen. It was 2 a.m. I got up and found the light on. The back door was ajar, and on the table was a cup of tea steaming. I thought maybe I had forgotten to turn something off until I smelled it. It was Roberta's favorite tea. The cup was still warm. I checked the whole house. There was no one. I locked the door with the key and went back to bed, uneasy. The next day, I told Elisa, laughing, trying to take the weight off it. She looked at me seriously. Mom has a copy of the key. She uses it when she comes to drop things off. At 2 a.m.? Sometimes she has insomnia. She goes out for walks. I said nothing, but that night I slept with the bedroom door locked. Weeks later, I began to notice that someone was going through my things. My computer appeared on when I was sure I had turned it off. My toothbrush was damp in the morning. One afternoon, checking my emails, I saw that my session had been opened from another device at 4 a.m. I asked Elisa, but she swore she hadn't touched anything. I began to suspect Roberta, though I didn't know how. Until one day, while I was working in the garden, I saw her car parked a few meters away with the engine off. I thought she was waiting for Elisa, but when I approached, there was no one inside. On the passenger seat, however, there was a notebook. I opened it, curious. On the first page, in her perfect handwriting, it read, "Observations, Rogerio." I turned the pages and my breath disappeared. They were notes about me, arrival and departure times, the foods I prepared, even comments about my phone calls. On the last page, a phrase written very large, "He knows too much." I closed the notebook and put it under my jacket. That night I hid it in the garage without saying anything to Elisa. Since then, every time Roberta came to visit us, I pretended normalcy, but I couldn't help feeling her gaze fixed on me longer than necessary. That night, we argued, she screamed that I was going crazy, that I was destroying the relationship with my suspicions. But there was something different in her eyes as she spoke, as if it wasn't entirely her. Later, when I came back from the sofa in the early morning, I heard whispering in the hallway. She didn't know I was awake. She was whispering a name. "Mom? Yes, Mom, I understand." In that moment, I felt a cold that no logical explanation could dispel. My wife wasn't a hostage of Roberta. She never had been. In some incomprehensible way, she had always belonged to her mother, and I was just the intruder. One rainy afternoon, coming back from work, I found the front door open. I ran inside. Elisa was fine, but there was something on the hallway floor. The notebook. My hiding place had been useless, and on top of it, a note written in that same delicate handwriting. "You shouldn't have read that." It was almost time for the two of us to talk alone. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed on the sofa with a kitchen knife in my hand, listening to every creak of the wood, every beat of the wind. One Saturday morning, I went down to the garage to get a toolbox. The floor was damp, and in the center of the space was something I didn't remember leaving there. A carefully folded grocery bag. Inside were a pair of rubber gloves, a half-empty bottle of bleach, and a photo. In the photo, I was sleeping on the sofa. The image was recent, very recent. You could see the fresh scar on my elbow that I had wounded 3 days before, the same blanket I was using that week. And in the lower corner, almost invisible, the shadow of 2 bare feet beside me, as if someone had been there at night while I slept, watching. I felt my breath leave me. I ran upstairs to the kitchen. I locked the door and stood there trembling for a while. When Elisa came back from shopping, I showed her the photo. She went pale, but instead of reacting with fear, she murmured, "It must be a bad joke. Mom wouldn't do something like that." And who else could get into the house? Elisa didn't answer. That night we argued. She screamed that I was going crazy, that I was destroying the relationship with my suspicions. I went to sleep on the sofa. I didn't close my eyes all night. At 3 a.m., I heard soft, slow footsteps coming from the hallway. I didn't want to move. The shadow stopped right in front of me. I could smell Roberta's sweet perfume, and then a murmur so low I barely heard it. "Wake up. I want to see your eyes." I turned around in a jump. I turned on the lamp. There was no one. The door remained closed. I tried to turn the handle, locked. The key had been turned from the outside, and in that moment, the truth crystallized like ice in my veins. I wasn't being watched anymore. I was being hunted. At dawn, the door was unlocked. Elisa asked me to go away from home to breathe. I went to a hotel not far away, registered under another name, a paranoid impulse that would make sense later. I spent 3 nights there staring at the ceiling, waiting to hear a whisper that didn't come. Or maybe it did come. Maybe I just pretended to sleep while Roberta walked through the hotel corridor, leaving that sweet perfume I couldn't escape. On the 3rd night, something woke me up, a whisper. It wasn't coming from Elisa. It was coming from the hallway, from all sides, from the walls. Her voice, Roberta's voice, calling Elisa by her name. And if I told you that the most terrifying prisons aren't made of bars, but of love twisted into something unrecognizable, something that wraps around you so gently you don't realize you're suffocating until it's too late. The whisper grew louder, more insistent, as if the walls themselves were breathing her words. I understood then that escape had never been an option, only the illusion of one. Share your experience in the comments beginning with "I feel that," because sometimes naming the invisible cage is the first act of breaking free, the first recognition that what we called love was actually control wearing a beautiful mask. Your feelings, however dark or confused, deserve to be spoken into existence. When you admit what you feel, you shatter the silence that keeps these patterns alive. Slowly, I ran to the bedroom. Elisa was no longer in bed. The door was open. In the hallway, barefoot in her bathrobe, walking with her eyes closed as if in a trance, my wife descended the stairs. I tried to hold her, but she broke free with a strength she shouldn't have possessed. "No, Rogerio," she whispered, but the voice wasn't entirely hers. It had layers. "Mom needs me, she always has. You'll never understand that." I ran down the stairs. When I left the hotel, the street was empty. Elisa had disappeared into the shadows of dawn, and I knew, with the certainty of desperation, that she would never be found. I spent the following hours going around hospitals, stations, anywhere she might have gone. No one had seen her. Then I remembered the card I found on the floor, the nursing home number. I drove there without notifying the police. It was an old building, one of those that smells of disinfectant and loneliness. At the reception, a nurse with a kind face attended to me. "I came to see Roberta Gonçalves," I said. "Gonçalves?" She checked the register. "We don't have anyone by that name. There must be some mistake. She's been here for years on the lower floor." The nurse shook her head. "Sir, that room was closed in 2018. The lady who lived there passed away 7 years ago." I went mute. "It can't be. I saw her. I spoke with her weeks ago." The nurse looked at me with pity. "Perhaps you should speak with the director," she said quietly. The director received me in a small, cramped room. When I mentioned Roberta's name, his face paled. He remained silent for a while, looking at his hands. "I was reluctant to tell this," he began. "But yes, Roberta Gonçalves was here. Her daughter admitted her when she started having violent episodes. Very violent." "What kind of episodes?" He took a deep breath. "The mother. She said she heard voices, voices of people she could take. She said she had the obligation to protect her daughter at any cost, that her daughter was hers, always would be, and no one could separate them." My breath disappeared. "When Roberta passed away," he continued, "her daughter Elisa stopped coming, left us with all the admission debts, as if she had abandoned her mother to death." "When did she stop coming?" I asked, needing to know. About a month after the death. It seemed like she had disappeared from the entire city. I stood there speechless. It can't be. I saw her. I spoke with her weeks ago. The text came with a photo. Elisa, with a silver scar gleaming on her neck, eyes swollen, smiling weakly beside her mother. Behind them, a white wall and an almost invisible chain coming from her wrist. The photo left me frozen. Elisa's smile wasn't real. It was the expression of someone who pretends to survive. I analyzed that image 1,000 times. In the background, you could see a barred window and a number painted on the wall. 12. I clung to this detail, called the Sorocaba police, and showed them the photo. They said they would do a sweep, but couldn't intervene without precise coordinates. I called the Sorocaba police with the coordinates I could extract from the photo, or at least what my GPS could triangulate. But the location was too vague, and Elisa's cell signal had disappeared hours ago. So I decided to go on my own. For 2 days, I drove through villages and back roads looking for any clue. No one knew Roberta or Elisa, until at a gas station, an older man told me he had seen a lady who looked like a school principal and a pale girl at an old abandoned farm near a stream. He gave me directions. I arrived at nightfall. The house was falling apart, with the roof covered in moss and windows boarded up. I left the car far away and advanced on foot. As I approached the abandoned farm, the smell grew stronger, a mixture of humidity and chlorine. The front door was locked with a padlock, but the back door gave way when I pushed it. Inside, in the main room, the silence was so dense I could hear my own breathing. There was furniture covered with sheets, dust everywhere, and an old portrait of a woman whose face had a severe beauty. Something that could have been loving but had transformed into something I didn't understand. I would discover later, leaving the police station with copies of photos from the asylum archives, that it was Roberta. Roberta at 30 years old, before the hatred, before everything. I climbed the stairs slowly. Each step creaked as if complaining. In the hallway I heard something, a slight rhythmic metallic sound. I followed the sound to a closed door. "Elisa," I whispered. The sound stopped, and then a low, trembling voice. "Rogerio, go away, please." I pushed the door. It was locked. I hit it with my shoulder until the wood gave way. Inside, the air was heavy, almost unbreathable. Elisa was in a chair, hands tied with a thin chain, eyes red. I ran to free her, but then I heard a dry click behind me. "You shouldn't have come, Rogerio." Roberta's voice was so calm it paralyzed me. She was at the door with a small pistol pointed at my chest. "I just wanted you to understand," she said. "Elisa doesn't know how to take care of herself. The marriage was making her sick. You were taking her away from me. Roberta, please." I tried to approach. "She's sick. She needs help." "I am the help," she whispered. What would happen if in this moment you realized that love without boundaries isn't love at all, but possession dressed in tender words, a cage built from kisses and concern? The question hung between us like smoke, choking and impossible to grasp. I saw in Roberta's eyes not madness, but absolute conviction, the kind that makes monsters believe they're saints. Write in the comments something beginning with "I transform," because breaking free from toxic bonds requires us to transform our understanding of what love truly means, to recognize that real love liberates while possession destroys. Your transformation, however small or incomplete, is a beacon for those still lost in the fog of manipulation. When you declare how you're changing, you give permission for others to begin their own metamorphosis. In that moment, Elisa screamed, throwing herself to the side. I took advantage to lunge at Roberta. The gun fell to the floor and the fight was clumsy, desperate. She scratched me, hit me with a strength that didn't seem to come from a human body. Finally, I managed to push her against the wall. She fell, hitting her head. The sound was dry, too dry, like glass breaking. And when I approached to make sure, her body had disappeared. There was no blood, only the sweet perfume lingering in the air, growing stronger and stronger. I ran to Elisa, untied her, and we stumbled out of there. Outside, the night was a wall of darkness. I drove aimlessly until we found a gas station and I called the police. My hands shaking so badly I could barely dial the numbers, my voice breaking as I tried to explain what had happened, what we had survived. When they arrived at the farm, Roberta was no longer there. Not the gun, not the blood, not any trace that anyone had lived there. Only the crooked portrait, and on the table, a note written in her handwriting. "Don't worry, Rogerio. A mother always knows where to find her daughter." The police took us to give statements. After hours, they suggested we not return home for now. We ended up going to a nearby hotel. Elisa didn't speak, didn't eat, just stared out the window as if waiting for something. On the third night, I woke to a muffled sound. I went to the bathroom. Elisa wasn't there. The hotel room door was ajar. On the floor, a white card with her mother's room number at a nursing home in São Paulo, where she was supposedly admitted years ago. The message written in blue ink said, "I understand now, Rogerio. Now she's with me." The next morning, the room was empty. Elisa had disappeared. The police checked the hotel cameras. In the footage, you could see her leaving alone, in her bathrobe, barefoot shortly after 3 a.m. She walked calmly, as if following a voice only she could hear. She crossed the lobby without looking at anyone and disappeared into the street. She was never seen again. I spent the following hours going around hospitals, stations, anywhere she might have gone. No one had seen her. Then I remembered the card I found on the floor, the nursing home number. I drove there without notifying the police. It was an old building, one of those that smells of disinfectant and loneliness. At the reception, a nurse with a kind face attended to me. "I came to see Roberta Gonçalves," I said. "Gonçalves?" She checked the register. "We don't have anyone by that name. There must be some mistake. She's been here for years, on the lower floor." The nurse shook her head. "Sir, that room was closed in 2018. The lady who lived there passed away 7 years ago." I went mute. It can't be. I saw her. I spoke with her weeks ago. The nurse looked at me with pity. "Perhaps you should speak with the director," she said quietly. The director received me in a small, cramped room. When I mentioned Roberta's name, his face paled. He remained silent for a while, looking at his hands. "I was reluctant to tell this," he began. "But yes, Roberta Gonçalves was here. Her daughter admitted her when she started having violent episodes, very violent." "What kind of episodes?" He took a deep breath. "The mother. She said she heard voices of people she could take. She said she had the obligation to protect her daughter at any cost, that her daughter was hers, always would be, and no one could separate them." My breath disappeared. "When Roberta passed away," he continued, "her daughter Elisa stopped coming, left us with all the admission debts, as if she had abandoned her mother to death." "When did she stop coming?" I asked, needing to know. "About a month after the death. It seemed like she had disappeared from the entire city. I stood there speechless. It can't be. I saw her. I spoke with her weeks ago." I brought the police, but there was no way to prove anything. The address on the envelope didn't exist, and the paper had no fingerprints. They asked me to rest, to let the professionals work, but I couldn't. The weeks passed, and each day was worse. The nights were longer, and the silence of the apartment destroyed me. One early morning, while I was on my phone, a new notification appeared from an unknown number, a video file. I opened it, trembling. It was a stationary camera recording. Elisa was sitting in front of a table with a serene face. In front of her, Roberta's silhouette, though her face didn't appear. Elisa was speaking, but the audio was almost a whisper. I showed the file to them, but when they opened it, and I'm sure the file was there seconds before, it only displayed a black background and a sound. The sound of a heartbeat. It wasn't an audio effect. It was as if something invisible was breathing inside the phone. One of the officers went pale. "This shouldn't be possible," he murmured, but didn't elaborate. After that, they no longer wanted to help. That same night before sleeping, I smelled a familiar, sweet perfume floating in the air. On the bedroom mirror was vapor, as if someone had just breathed very close. And on the glass, written with a finger, a phrase: "A mother never leaves her daughter alone, nor her son-in-law." Do you remember the last time you felt truly alone? Or have you realized that some presences never leave, that they anchor themselves to your life like shadows that grow darker the more light you shine on them? The question dissolved into the humid air of the room, unanswered and accusatory. I knew then that distance meant nothing, that running was just another form of staying still. Share in the comments your inner light with "I illuminate," because even in the darkest haunting, even when presence becomes prison and love becomes terror, we possess the power to illuminate our own path forward. Your light, however dim it may feel right now, is enough to take the next step. When you declare what you illuminate, you remind yourself and others that darkness only wins when we stop searching for the dawn. Since then, I avoid mirrors, not because I'm afraid of what I see, but because I'm afraid of what I don't see. I changed houses, changed cities, even tried to create a new life with another name. But the truth followed me like a second skin, like breath I couldn't hold forever. No matter how far I ran, the sweet perfume found me. No matter how many locks I installed, the whispers seeped through the walls. But Roberta isn't the kind of person who lets her belongings go away. From time to time, when I'm alone and the silence becomes too dense, the phone vibrates. A message with no sender, no contact information, just Elisa's voice in audio, whispering 3 words. "We are waiting." And I know with a certainty that freezes the blood that they're not talking about death. They're talking about eternity, about a mother who will never let go of her daughter, and now somehow about a son-in-law who also became hers. My name is Michaela. I'm 34 years old and I've worked as a nurse for more than a decade. I never believed in superstition or ghost stories, but there are fears that transcend the supernatural. There are fears that have names, faces, and obsessive desires. The fear I met was called Maria, my ex-mother-in-law, and it changed everything I knew about real fear. I met Maria when I started dating her son, Daniel. She was a dry woman, direct, one of those who analyzes you from top to bottom before even greeting you. "You're shorter than I imagined," she told me at our first family lunch, without taking her eyes off the wine glass. Everyone laughed. I laughed too. But inside, I felt something had broken. In the beginning, things were tolerable. She came to the house every Sunday, always with some dish to help or with little gifts for Daniel. Little by little, however, she began to meddle in absolutely everything. She reorganized the pantry, touched the washing machine, gave me advice on how to take care of her son. "Daniel doesn't like it when you reheat food, dear. You should prepare everything fresh. Oh, it's better you don't use so much makeup. Remember his ex?" Daniel just laughed at my complaints. "My mother is like that. She doesn't mean harm." But over time, her visits became more invasive. She arrived without warning, even knowing I was sleeping after a night shift. I would wake up to the sound of the door, the smell of freshly brewed coffee, and that sing-song voice of hers. "Don't worry, dear. I just came to do a little cleaning." One afternoon, after working 14 hours straight, I came home and found my underwear folded on top of the bed. Next to it, a note in her fine handwriting. I saw that you've been buying small sizes. Don't hurt yourself trying to look like what you're not. I told Daniel, crying. He got angry at me. What do you want me to stop seeing my mother because of nonsense? He yelled. That was our first big fight. Things got worse when we decided to get married. Everything happened too fast. Within a few months, we were planning the wedding. Maria insisted on organizing part of the event, the menu, the flowers, even the dress. I didn't want to argue, so I let her participate. What I didn't imagine was that she would use the wedding to mark territory. On the day of the ceremony, she handed me a gift in front of all the guests, an old wooden box. Inside was a small white handkerchief, embroidered with Daniel's initials and a drop of dried blood in one corner. It's a family tradition, she said, smiling. I've kept it since the day he was born. I felt nauseous. I wanted to return it, but she hugged me tightly and whispered in my ear, now it's also your responsibility to take care of him as I did. Don't forget. After the wedding, the worst began. Maria called every single day. If Daniel didn't answer, she called me. If I didn't respond, she showed up at the door. I began to feel watched. I noticed her car parked in front of our house at any time, even at dawn. One night, while Daniel slept, I saw his phone screen light up with a message. It was from Mom. Don't let Michaela take you away from me. She doesn't understand you. I slid the conversation up on the phone, finger trembling. There were dozens of messages, all with the same sick tone. Be careful with what she cooks. Sometimes women hide things. Don't lose sight of her. And the last message, sent an hour before, said, tonight I'm going to stop by for a moment to see you two. Don't wake her. I looked out the window. Her car was there, lights off, and in the driver's seat, a motionless silhouette watching the house. I stood in front of the window, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination, but it was there. Maria's grey car parked right in front, headlights off, and the silhouette of a still head behind the wheel. My heart pounded in my chest. I didn't want to wake Daniel. I knew that, as always, he would say I was exaggerating. So I just kept watching. 10 minutes passed, 15. The figure didn't move. I grabbed my phone and took a photo, but in the dim light you could barely distinguish the outline. When I looked outside again, the car was no longer there. It disappeared without engine noise, without door slam, nothing. My heart raced. This wasn't possible. The next morning, I played dumb and asked Daniel if his mother had stopped by. He answered without looking up from his coffee. Yes, she came by for a moment last night. She said she left something for you in the mailbox. What time? I don't know. When you were sleeping. I ran downstairs. In the mailbox, a white envelope with no sender. Inside, a printed photo. It was me sleeping in bed, hair spread on the pillow. The photo had been taken from our bedroom door. I felt my stomach turn. I went upstairs and showed him. Daniel was quiet, not knowing what to say. This isn't normal anymore, I said. She's crossing all limits. She must have come in to leave the gift. And who said she could enter our bedroom? I yelled. That was the first time I saw Daniel doubt her. That night we locked all the doors and windows with keys. I tried to sleep, but the silence was heavy. Around 3 a.m., I heard a noise in the kitchen, the sound of glass being carefully broken, followed by the click of a lock opening from inside. That wasn't natural. I got up slowly, heart racing, and grabbed the first object I found, a metal candlestick. When I reached the hallway, I saw a shadow moving. Who's there? I whispered. No one answered, but I heard the click of the refrigerator opening. I approached and turned on the light. The refrigerator door was ajar, and inside, on the top shelf, was something that shouldn't be there. A small glass box with a label. On it, in elegant handwriting, was written, "For when your heart grows cold." Inside was a piece of raw meat wrapped in gauze. I screamed. Daniel came running down, saw the box, and went pale. "This is from your hospital," he murmured. "The container is a tissue sample box." I froze. No one outside the medical team could have access to that, and I knew very well what it meant. Someone had entered my locker at work. That same night we went to a hotel. Daniel called his mother several times. She never answered. The next morning he went back home to get some things while I stayed in the lobby. When he came back, his face was disturbed. "What happened?" I asked. He took a folded piece of paper from his pocket. On the back, the same sweet perfume of Maria. The note said, "You can't hide him from me, Daniel. I was here before you." We decided to report it. The police came, took our statement, searched the house. There were no signs of forced entry, no fingerprints, no cameras, but the officer looked at me in a way I'll never forget. "Man, are you sure your mother-in-law is alive?" I was speechless. "Of course, I saw her last week." The officer flipped through the papers with a serious expression. "According to our records, your mother-in-law passed away 3 months ago. Cardiac arrest, signed by Dr. Plinio. And according to what's here, you were one of the nurses on duty." I felt the ground disappear. I remembered that day. An elderly woman had been admitted to the emergency room. I didn't see her face clearly because the body arrived covered with a sheet. It had been a very busy night, many patients admitted. I was in another sector, in serious injuries. But what I remembered was the conversation between the doctors. The family didn't retrieve the body. Who would you be if you discovered that everything you thought was real was just the surface, that beneath your everyday life, something ancient and hungry had been watching, waiting, claiming what it believed was rightfully its? The question carved itself into my consciousness like a blade, sharp and unforgiving. I knew then that my reality had been a carefully constructed lie, and the truth was far more terrifying than any nightmare I could have imagined. Leave your testimony in the comments with the words, "I have learned that," because survival sometimes means accepting truths that shatter everything we believed about love, family, and the boundaries between life and death. Your lesson, hard-won and paid for in fear, might be the lantern that guides someone else through their own darkness. When you share what you've learned, you transform your terror into testimony, your survival into strength. "There must be some mistake," I murmured. The officer agreed uncomfortably. "It could be a case of mistaken identity, but check carefully, ma'am." When they left, I stayed silent. Daniel was white. "What if?" he started to say. "No," I interrupted him. "Don't say nonsense." That night, we didn't sleep. I checked the hospital file through a colleague. The death certificate was indeed there. Same name, same address. But the worst part was when I looked for the medical record. The patient had been admitted for respiratory collapse with signs of mild intoxication. The registered companion was Daniel. I didn't understand anything. I demanded explanations. He sat on the edge of the bed and lowered his head. I admitted her, yes, but I didn't think it was serious. She asked me not to tell you anything. She didn't want to worry you. And why didn't anyone tell me about her death? Because the hospital told me there was no close family. I didn't want to believe it. He took a deep breath before speaking more. "I received these messages after she died," he said with a weak voice. "I thought it was someone hacking or that I was going crazy. That's why I kept them. I wanted to be sure before scaring you." He got up, went to the closet and took out a shoebox. Inside was an old phone without a case. He turned on the device and showed me the messages. They were all from Mom. The bizarre thing is that the most recent ones were dated 2 days ago, after she had already died. "Are you sleeping well? Don't forget to put the scarf on Michaela. She catches the flu easily. Today I'm going to stop by to see you two. I have something for her." The messages appeared from a private number. "It can't be," I whispered. "This phone, where did you get this?" "It was in her car when they returned it to me," he said. "I thought it was hers." I looked at him horrified. The vehicle had been delivered after her death. At dawn, I got up to go to the bathroom. It was 3:47 a.m. In the hallway, something made me stop. A familiar smell, the same sweet perfume as always. I followed the trail to the kitchen. On the table was a steaming cup of tea, the same brand she used. I approached, trembling. Under the cup, a folded paper. "Don't worry, dear. Sometimes a mother needs to come back to take care of her own." The tea liquid was moving, as if someone had just left it there. At that instant, I heard a sigh behind me. I turned suddenly. There was no one, just my reflection in the oven glass. A figure behind me, standing, with gray hair and a fixed gaze. The cup I was holding fell and broke into 1,000 pieces. When Daniel came running, I pointed to the empty table. The cup that was there seconds ago had disappeared. Only the paper remained, and on it the letters seemed fresh, as if they had been freshly written. The next day, the hospital called me. Something strange had happened. Maria's body wasn't in the morgue. The record showed it had been retrieved by a direct relative, but the signature was mine. When the hospital director called me, confused, he showed me the sheet. The signature looked a lot like mine, but it wasn't. It was too perfect, too smooth. I tried to fake confidence. "It wasn't me. But it says here that you came with your husband." "That's impossible," I yelled. Daniel grabbed my arm to calm me down, but I noticed him tense, cold. Something in his look made me doubt. That night, I didn't want to go home. I stayed at Luciana's house, a nursing colleague who understood my desperation. But at 2 a.m., my phone vibrated. A message from Daniel. "Come back, please. You're not alone here." The text froze my blood. It wasn't, "I'm not alone," it was, "You're not alone here." A bizarre mistake, as if someone else was trying to write and failing. I tried to call him. He didn't answer. Then another message arrived from an unknown number. "You have to come. Don't leave me with him." Confusion devoured me. Was it Daniel? Was it her? A rational voice said it was a trap, an obvious trap. But the message was her voice, or so it seemed to me. Desperation and fear mixed in my chest. I called the police while grabbing the keys to the rental car. "I need you to go to my house now. Something very wrong is happening." But I was already running outside, knowing the police would arrive too late. A yellow taxi passed at that very moment. I got in desperately. "Such street, such number," I yelled to the driver. The house was in twilight, only a lamp lit in the living room. On the table, 2 cups of tea, one steaming, the other already cold. "Daniel," I called. His voice came from the hallway. "Here!" When I saw him, I knew something wasn't right. He had a lost look, his shirt stained with dirt. In his hands, a wooden box. The same one Maria had brought at our wedding, with that blood-stained handkerchief. "What are you doing with that?" I asked. "She wanted me to give it back to you. She said now was the right time." The box was damp. I opened it carefully. Inside was an old flash drive with a label. "Michaela, take care of him." I didn't need a computer. Daniel went straight to the television and connected the device. On the screen appeared a grainy image, the interior of an operating room. I was there in uniform and mask, holding a surgical tray. The camera moved nervously, as if it were floating, until it focused on me up close. My voice sounded muffled. "The patient is stable for now." Then an abrupt turn to the stretcher. There was no patient, just a white sheet, a body covered. Someone, myself, lifted the cloth. Maria's face, eyes half open. A voice, mine, whispered, "I'm sorry, I couldn't save you." The video cut out. Daniel turned to me, and the video still flickered on the screen. "Why didn't you tell me?" My whole body trembled. "I didn't record that. I don't remember that," I screamed, tears falling uncontrollably. "This is fake. It has to be." But I saw in his eyes the doubt planted. Then the light flickered. A sharp blow echoed from the kitchen. My heart accelerated. I ran there. On the table, the cup of tea was there, but at the bottom, floating, was a tuft of grey hair. "Daniel?" Let's get out of here, I said. Now. He didn't respond. When I turned around, he was no longer there. Just his phone on the floor with a new message on the screen. Thank you for taking care of him, dear. Now it's his turn to rest with me. I ran out, screaming his name. No one believed me afterward. The police searched the house, the yard, the car. There was no trace of him, nor of the flash drive. Months passed. I moved, changed jobs, tried to rebuild something of a normal life, but normality is a word that lost meaning. Last night, as I was closing the blinds of the new apartment, I saw something that froze my blood. My reflection didn't move at the same time as me. It stayed still, staring at me with that familiar, sweet smile. Behind me in the mirror, a silhouette with grey hair. And then I heard, not with my ears, but inside my head. I thought you had understood, dear. A mother always takes care of her children. Always, even after they're gone. I understood then. It wasn't about punishment. It was about possession. And I was still too alive to be freed.